Hey everybody, welcome into a live edition of NFL Draft Central on CLNS Media. We are taking you all the way up to the lead up to the 2021 NFL Draft. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, and Brad Kelly alongside. And guys, I think I can speak for the three of us when I say that this is one of the more highly anticipated drafts for the Patriots in quite some time. And I'm not a Patriot historian. Maybe we'd have to call our friend Jerry Thornton or something like that to clue me in on the history of the Patriots in terms of drafts, but this has got to be right up there in terms of just anticipation and the direction of the team for the next foreseeable future. What's going to happen tonight, I think, is going to set the stage for what could happen with this organization for the next 5 or 10 years, even potentially, if they do take a quarterback.
Well, I think we know it's at least, my apologies, Brad. I don't know how old you are, but I mean, for me and you, like for sure, it's the biggest draft of our lifetimes, the biggest draft since 93. When they had the first overall pick, they took Drew Bledsoe, and you look at what came out of that draft. They made a couple of AFC championship games, and ultimately, I don't want to say it didn't go the way they wanted it to, because they ended up okay, but like they built a core kind of starting from that draft, and they became this competitive team even before Brady got there. The difference is they were 1-1. They were taking Bledsoe. That's what it was. You moved on. We don't know what they're going to do tonight. So you have kind of that gravity of resetting the franchise, but normally when you have that gravity, you're picking in the top 3 picks. You more or less know who you're going to get. That hardly exists tonight. Any sort of assurance of what they're going to do. If somebody tells you they know, they are lying, or you're talking to Bill Belichick.
I think if you go back, just thinking about past Patriot drafts, 2008, where they were coming off the loss in the Super Bowl with the Giants, the heartbreaker, and they were drafting number 10 overall, and that was when they took Gerard Mayo. I think that was one where it was like, this 10th overall pick could put us over the top if it pans out. And eventually it did. It wasn't immediate, but we thought the team was going to be very strong. Maybe that 10th overall player, could change things. But as you said, when it comes back, going back to 1993, when they needed a quarterback, this is the first time in, almost 30 years that the Patriots are in need of a quarterback, potentially in the NFL draft, and that completely changes the complexion of the way they approach it.
Absolutely, and I agree. I think it's Bledsoe in 93 is the last time where there's this much riding on a draft for the Patriots because it is the quarterback position. And I want to talk about the quarterbacks now. So what's on everybody's mind. Going into today, I think there was a lot of chatter about the Patriots and Justin Fields. I'm not sure where they actually stand on that. We're kind of stuck in is it a smokescreen? Is it a real love for Justin Fields or like for Justin Fields? But I will say this, the Patriots have made calls to pretty much every single team outside of the top 3 teams and obviously the Miami Dolphins as well because of the division thing. They've made calls to everybody ahead of them in the top 14 picks of the NFL draft to see which teams would be interested in moving back, which teams would be interested in making a deal with the Patriots if their quarterback that they have at the top of their board decides to fall. And if you kind of connect the dots, they probably knew that they weren't going to get Trevor Lawrence, obviously, or Zach Wilson. So it's someone in that Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones category that the Patriots are attracted to, someone that they might actually enough to move up in the first round of this draft tonight and take as their franchise quarterback. So the question that I can pose to the panel here is, first of all, which quarterback I think would you prefer the Patriots are interested in, but maybe also which quarterback you feel like fits them the best or you think is actually a realistic outcome here tonight?
Yeah, so personally, I think I like Lance for them a little bit more, but I think the ultimate thing is they get the guy that they want. I want them to take the quarterback that they want more than I want them to take the quarterback that I want. I know that kind of sounds like no duh, like obviously they know better than me, but I just really, I wrote about this for 985thesportshub.com yesterday. I think at this point, we can talk about schematic fit, right? And when people talk about quarterbacks fitting, that conversation tends to end at schematic fit. Not that it's not important, but I think especially now when you're looking at, like we said, you're kind of overhauling the franchise. You want a guy who's who fits the chemistry. You want a guy who's a chemistry fit, who's a locker room fit, who's a cultural fit. That's the word I was looking for. And that all of that to me is Justin Fields. And you look at some of the guys they've taken recently. 4 of their last 5 quarterbacks played in the SEC briefly, but Fields did. 4 of their last 5 quarterbacks were transfers, which Fields was. And I think there's something to that. I think Bill looks at it, and we know how much they like experience, right? And if he sees a guy and he knows that guy, okay, he learned 2 playbooks in 4 years. He was quickly able to, get in good graces with new teammates, quickly able to work with new coaches, all of that. That's so rare at the college level. I think he values that experience. So when you look at that pattern, SEC quarterbacks and transfers, in this draft, there's 3 guys that check both those boxes. Franks is a 7th round UDFA. Jamie Newman's kind of interesting, but Justin Fields checks every box in some ways, but the schematic box, which he kind of checks, kind of doesn't. And I think they would change their offense, change their scheme a little bit if they could get a guy who checks the rest of the boxes as well as Fields does. And by the way, is immensely talented like Justin Fields is.
So you just blew my mind because I was trying to think of Jacoby Brissett, and I forgot that he was a backup at Florida for a few years in there. I was like, well,
Alex did his research.
Yeah,
for what it's worth, so I said 4 of 5, right? The one exception is Garoppolo, who they supposedly loved more than any of them.
All these rules, though, right? Is Jimmy G,
right?
Like small school guy, someone that wasn't, on that Power 5 SEC type of conference. He's sort of the Trey Lance of the Patriots draft group, right?
Well, and that's why for me, you guys could probably do this better than I could as the film buffs. So my project this year, I figured out the 4 of 5 thing, the transfer thing. I think my project next year now is, okay, what was so special about Jimmy that he broke the mold? But yeah, when you kind of look at Lance checks the scheme box perfectly. Fields checks every other box perfectly. And I think that they're, give me the guy who checks the most boxes is kind of what they're going to be thinking. And to me, that's Fields of the players available.
Now, I think you bring up an interesting point in the sense that Lance might be better for the scheme, but I don't think Fields is, as you touched on, he's not a misfit for the scheme.
Right.
I think if they're going to run a version of the Cam Newton Patriots offense, not completely, that much quarterback runs, but a version of it, Justin Fields fits that very well. I actually think he looks quite a bit like Cam Newton, just shrunken down a little bit coming out of college and his strengths and weaknesses. And similar to what you said, I think Lance is probably more of a natural fit. They had a lot of under center play action stuff at North Dakota State during the year he started. So that could be something that he immediately thrives in and is going to be better at than Justin Fields as far as early in their careers. So he might be able to play, Lance might be able to play sooner in New England, but I think ultimately Fields is the superior talent and going to be the better pro quarterback.
I've been on Justin Fields' bandwagon for a couple of weeks now. I feel like this is a quarterback that we're getting way too caught up in the weeds of things that maybe we aren't privy to that are going on off the field with Justin Fields, with these teams talking to this player. Because when you watch him on tape, when you see the competitiveness that he had, you'll break some ribs, come right back and throw a touchdown pass and play the rest of the game. Those types of things, you see all these things, and it doesn't speak to any of the kind of rumors that you hear about his drive and his willingness to be great and his work ethic and all this kind of stuff. You don't get injured. He's actually been injured twice, and he's come back. He was in 2019. He hurt his knee, came back in that game and won Ohio State the game that year, and then he came back from the broken ribs against Clemson and threw 6 touchdown passes and won the game that year. So all these talk about work ethic and drive and desire to be great and all those things. Well, the tangible evidence that we have is that Justin Fields goes out there and checks all of those boxes every single week. Then you talk about an ability to, run from a scheme that is a full field progression offense that has a lot of option routes down the field that causes him to make reads all throughout the entire field. Those are things that he's done throughout his entire career from the pocket. And I think we hear a lot of stuff about his processing speed and his time to throw. To me, Ohio State just didn't ask him to do it a whole lot. They didn't ask him to operate in that quick game. They didn't ask him to get the ball out in under 2.5 seconds as part of the system. A lot of these other college offenses, you deal with RPOs, you deal with screen passes or throws behind the line of scrimmage, and you have a lot of these built-in scheme throws where the ball's coming out quickly. And Justin Fields didn't have a ton of those in the Ohio State offense. This is a vertical offense down the field. Now, the other guy I do want to talk about, and I'm a big Trey Lance fan as well, but I just can't get over the FCS competition and the lack of game tape and experience and add those things up to Patriots. It's just too hard for me to look at them and say, are you really going to draft a guy with under 300 career pass attempts to watch on tape? If you're Bill Belichick, that's just really out of his box, right? The other guy that I look at is Mac Jones. And this is more of a conversation, I think. And Alex, we've talked about this a little bit on the podcast. Nick Saban and the connection that Nick Saban has with Bill Belichick. And what is Nick Saban telling Bill about these quarterback prospects and specifically about his own guy in Mac Jones? And what do they know about him behind the scenes? What do they know about him in terms of all the other intangible things that you hear about with Mac Jones? And furthermore, just that cerebralness and that ability to operate from in the pocket, maneuver the pocket, and just throw with accuracy from the pocket. He checks all of those boxes for the Patriots as well. So to me, it comes down to Mac Jones or Justin Fields. I think it's one of those two guys if they do want to make this happen. How likely is it that either of those guys fall in their range? I think that they're talking about more what we heard Belichick talk about a few weeks ago, when they said, what if our guy that we thought was going in the 6 or 7 range falls to the 12 or 13 range, right? Then would we trade up? These trade up scenarios that we go from 15 to 4, I think that that's a little bit of a reach for the Patriots. But if somebody like Mac Jones falls a little bit or Justin Fields starts to slide a little bit and they can trade up 4 or 5 spots and still get their guy, I think that would definitely be more so on the table.
Yeah, and so I wrote about this, again, that same thing, 985thesportshub.com. It's about the Patriots using conference when they pick quarterbacks, if you want to check it out. And I think Saban's a huge key to this because, right, all of these guys, even if they don't play for Saban, he's scouting them. And by the way, that goes back to Fields too, because he had to come up with the game plan for Fields for the national championship. So I think, yeah, a player's coach is certainly going to have a lot of information, but is he really going to tell it warts and all? And I think if you go to somebody who has to game plan for that player, right, and has to prepare for that player, you're going to get the true story. So this will be interesting now to see, with Mac Jones, is Saban going to kind of blush him up and maybe, take some of the shine off and do what most coaches do for players? Or is he going to be real with Belichick? I think they like Mac Jones. I think there's a lot of reason for them to like Mac Jones. The reason we haven't been talking a ton about him the last couple of weeks, right, is because we thought he was going third for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? And that's the guy. I said this from the beginning, before all the free agency moves. If you just want to, get back to level, and the offense really struggled last year, and if you just want to get your head above water, and now that they've made all these signings, it's a little more than that. Mac Jones might be the best option because to me, he is the highest floor of any of the quarterbacks. I don't know that he's going to be great. Right. I don't know that he's destined for all pros and all of that, but I think he's going to, be an NFL starting quarterback week 1. And I think if you have the talent around him, he can go places. He's basically just healthy Jimmy Garoppolo. And, I've dumped all over Garoppolo the last couple of days, but he's 30. He gets hurt all the time and he's paid a ton of money, right? Mac Jones is Garoppolo minus all of that, which means he's a serviceable quarterback who can get you to the Super Bowl. So I think there is interest there, but if you're picking in the top 10, you're looking at upside, but there's nothing wrong with high floor at the quarterback position.
Brad, I can't imagine you're a big Mac Jones guy.
I see it with Mac Jones. I understand the why people like him, and so similar to what Alex was just saying about Jimmy Garoppolo on the floor. I just don't want the Patriots to take him. I would love if he goes to Pittsburgh and has a solid career and is like, okay, and they win 9 to 10 games a year. And I think that would work out for him. But as far as the Patriots goes, I don't want them to spend pick 15 or a trade up on a player who I think ceiling is limited. And I think that's the case with Mac Jones. And if I'm taking a quarterback in the top 10, it's a guy whose ceiling can really get you over the top, can put you over the top, take your roster to new heights, not be the reason that you fail in the Super Bowl.
That's why I just can't imagine that the San Francisco 49ers are really going to pull the trigger on Mac Jones because they lost the Super Bowl. And I know, Alex, we could argue about this for a couple of hours of why exactly they lost that Super Bowl. But they lost that Super Bowl, at least in part, because Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't hit a deep throw to put the game away, right? And now they're going to take pretty much the same exact guy in the first round of the draft that needs the scheme and needs the playmakers around him to do the heavy lifting for the most part. And it's not going to be a guy that's going to put them over the top. Now, the other conversation that we have to have with the quarterbacks, and then we're going to get into some of the non-
Wait, can I ask you guys something first? Because I've been thinking about this today, and I'm not the only person who's throwing this out there. Do we think that San Francisco, and I know this is mostly Patriots, but I just want to have this conversation because I'm having fun bashing the Niners. Do we think the Niners knew what they were doing when they traded up to 3? I mean, do you think they traded up to 3 like with a plan? Like, we are going to trade up to 3 and take X. Or do you think they just traded up to 3 to trade up to 3 and then suddenly got up to 3 and it was like, oh crap, now what do we do? Because it's certainly feeling like the second one.
If you take Kyle Shanahan's words at face value the other day, he said they had a specific guy in mind at number 3. And then when they got up there and they started opening the door to all of the options, they sort of started to get themselves into the weeds of, oh, you know, this guy does this well and that guy does that well. And it was a little bit more of an open conversation. From everything that you hear, it's Kyle Shanahan's been, Mac Jones has been his guy the whole time, right? And I think the front office and John Lynch and his people wanted him to have a little bit of a more open mind, right? And say, look, we get that you like Mac Jones for the same reasons you like Jimmy G, for the same reasons you like Kirk Cousins, and all these other guys that are just system quarterbacks for you, right? That can plug you can plug them into the supercomputer that is Kyle Shanahan's scheme, and they're going to press all the right buttons. We understand, but let's trade. Let's look at Justin Fields and let's think about how the heights that this offense can reach if we have a true playmaker at that position instead of somebody that's just there hitting X when he's supposed to hit X, right? What happens when you have a true playmaker there? And I think that Kyle Shanahan at least started to get swayed a little bit more towards some of the more talented and physically gifted QBs. So that's a long way of me saying is I think they originally thought they knew what they were doing, and then they got there and they realized, wow, you know, these are all 3 of these guys are really, really talented, and you can kind of make an argument for all 3.
Right. And something about that, Kyle Shanahan opening up a little bit about that is they really have nothing to hide because they pretty much number 1 and number 2 are set in stone as far as
right.
everyone believes. So they could even come out and say, hey, we're taking this quarterback right here, right now. And it really wouldn't change much. It's not like they're going to, as long as they're not going to trade out of the pick, then they really have nothing to hide. And I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. It seems like they wanted Mac Jones with the sense of once we get to 3, maybe we can open up and look deeper at these guys and really try to figure it out. And I think ultimately they're going to side with Trey Lance. I think the personnel department wants him. I think his ceiling is clearly higher. And as far as like all the reports that have come out and the way that the Broncos trading for Teddy Bridgewater meant that they wanted Trey Lance at pick number 9, realized the Niners swayed from Mac Jones to Trey Lance. And then they said, oh, we're not going to get Lance now at 9. Let's go get Teddy Bridgewater. To me, that's what that trade indicated. Obviously, we'll see later tonight.
Yeah, I know Benjamin Albright does a great job covering the Broncos. He mentioned that they wanted the guy they wanted at 9, and then it kind of seemed like when he wasn't going to fall to 9, like you said, Brad, they pivoted to Teddy Bridgewater and kind of are going in a different direction with that pick. And he still said that there's a chance that if their quarterback falls to 9, that they would still take a QB, Denver. But I think at the same time, you're 100% right that they thought their quarterback was going to fall originally, and now he isn't. So they had this sort of backdoor plan of Teddy Bridgewater, and here we are. Now, the other shoes to drop today, or one of them today, really came out today with Aaron Rodgers. But the first one that we have to talk about, and I don't like talking about it as much as you, Alex, but Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a conversation that
I hate talking about it.
Having.
Don't tell me I like talking. I can't.
I said you don't like talking about it. Okay. I said you don't like talking about it, but we have to talk about Jimmy G and just the optics of him coming back here to New England. I think that if the Patriots want Jimmy Garoppolo, then there is a deal to be had there with the 49ers. I think they'll figure out the contract with Jimmy G to fit the cap and all that kind of stuff. And the compensation, I don't think will be a problem. So if the Patriots really want this guy, want Jimmy G, they can have him. The question is why do the Patriots want Jimmy G? And why are we going down this road again? Is it the organization and Belichick's just sort of infatuation with the player that they developed behind their own in their own program, a second-round pick that they really developed into a starter, and they just really have an attachment to that, or what? I don't know, but I just think that we're in a situation now with Jimmy G where he is going to be available, and they probably could get this done if they wanted to.
Well, and that kind of begs the question to me is why haven't they? And that tells me that they think they can trade up, that they maybe think they can move up and get their guy. And if that's the case, whether it's Fields, Lance, Jones, whoever, that guy plus Cam is good enough. Look, I'm on the record as saying this, and I'll say it again because I'm happy to say it again because I think I'm the only one who has my head on straight around here. I would not give up anything of substance for Jimmy Garoppolo. If the 49ers want to pay me to take him, if it's, hey, we'll give you Jimmy and a fourth and you give us a sixth, now I'm listening. But San Francisco has absolutely no leverage. There's one team that can afford this guy. That's the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have no need for him. And how many teams really want him? On top of that, he has to renegotiate his contract, which he won't do anywhere, I would assume. He'd only do that in the right situation. And they saved $24 million against the cap this year and next year. So 48 total against the cap over the next 2 years if they release him. San Francisco has absolutely no motivation to keep this guy. He has no motivation to stay there. He's going to pull an Aaron Rodgers any minute and demand his release. I'm surprised he didn't audition for the Jeopardy hosting job. With that mug, you'd think he could get it. Wait it out. Turn it into a game of chicken. They're going to have to cut him eventually, or you can get them to pay you to take him off their hands. And if you put all that aside, he's 30 years old. He's finished less than 50% of the games, less than half of the games he was supposed to finish at a starting quarterback. And when he is healthy, he's okay. He's fine.
Let me cut you off for a second because Ian Rappaport
is it news? Did they just trade for him in the middle of that route?
No, it's news about the Patriots not interested in trading for Jimmy Garoppolo. So Ian Rappaport just now, I would never say never, but the Patriots aren't expected to trade for Jimmy Garoppolo tonight or anytime soon. The two sides could even come to terms, a big if. It would take a complex contract negotiation to get it done. Simply, New England doesn't have room to fit the contract, which is what I said yesterday. And what I have continued to say this whole time. You can talk about the cap being crap and all this kind of stuff, but the optics of it are that the Patriots and Jimmy G would have to come to a contract agreement that was under the $15 million the Patriots have left in their salary cap space. And then they would have to come to compensation with the 49ers in a trade. And those two things have always been a really difficult thing to overcome for the Patriots. And they called the Niners back in March and said, what's your asking price for Jimmy G? Maybe we would be interested in him. As soon as they signed Cam Newton back to that 1 year deal, I think the ship more or less sailed on Jimmy G.
Exactly. Wait it out. Let them cut him. And then you get to negotiate with him just straight up, brand new contract. And there you go. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the guy's 30 years old. Teams love to look at, right? They like to look at the 1 year window, the immediate window. But teams, especially the Patriots, love this, right? What's the 5 year outlook, right? What is our 5 year plan? I'll pose this question to both you guys. If they were to acquire Jimmy Garoppolo, let's say 3 year, $30 million contract, we'll be kind to the kid, but 3 year, $30 million contract. Does the 5 year outlook quarterback change at all? No. Same. I mean, for me, no. For me, they're still in for quarterback this year. And if not, next year, I'm pounding the table for a first round quarterback.
I think just generally speaking about Jimmy Garoppolo and the lack of interest, the Patriots got a second-round pick for him. To be honest, I know he started a bunch of games since then, but I don't think his value has really gone up or down because he's proven to be injury-prone since then. He's been solid. They went to a Super Bowl, but this past year when he was on the field, he wasn't very good. He's now 30 years old, as you guys have said. I wouldn't want to, like you said, nothing of substance. I wouldn't give a day 2 pick for him. Maybe day 3, and then as Evan alluded to, you'd have to throw in the contract negotiation. That would be difficult to come to terms to. So it just doesn't seem like it's in the cards. Even at the start of free agency, it just didn't feel like it would be realistic because of the complexity and the assets that would have to be surrendered. And then on top of that, the new contract.
What really screwed the 49ers here too was that Teddy Bridgewater deal, because Teddy Bridgewater has guaranteed money in his contract. So it's a little bit different situation contractually, but more or less it's a pretty good comparison. And they basically had to give Teddy Bridgewater to the Denver Broncos and then eat some of his salary in the process as well. So that was the type of deal that the Patriots were going to have to do with Jimmy G, was a 6th round pick. Niners eat some of his salary. Basically what you're doing if you're San Francisco is so that you don't just cut the player loose and get absolutely nothing back in return. So now if you're the 49ers, they can afford to hang on to Jimmy G. I think he stays there this year. They draft Trey Lance, and they allow Trey Lance to ease into it. We know that this is a player with Lance that's someone that more than likely should probably sit a little while before they throw him into the fire. That's always been the most, from the outside looking in, that's the situation for San Francisco that's made the most sense. Drafting Mac Jones and keeping Jimmy G on the roster makes zero sense. And nobody wants Jimmy G. He has no trade value. Same with Teddy Bridgewater. You're going to get a 6th-round pick back, plus eating some of his salary. At that point, if you're San Francisco, I think cutting him from a cap perspective just makes more sense because of how little dead money they have on Jimmy G's deal. What's a 6th-round pick worth when you have to pay half the contract, right? At that point, it doesn't really make sense. So if you're the Niners and you draft Mac Jones here tonight and you feel like you don't need Jimmy G at $27 million on your cap, I think they're going to end up cutting the player. And maybe the Patriots at that point would be interested in having a prove-it deal with Jimmy Garoppolo where he comes in and competes with Cam Newton as the bridge quarterback for whatever rookie they draft here in the next couple of days. That seems like the Patriots move here. The other bit of quarterback news today that I know everybody in the chat is talking about as we're trying to get to this point is Aaron Rodgers. And he has basically told the Green Bay Packers that according to Adam Schefter, he wants out of Green Bay. That's basically what Schefter said on ESPN a few hours ago. That might be a little bit strong, but from what he said, the contract negotiations have not gone well with Aaron Rodgers. He's obviously still a little bit sour about them taking Jordan Love in the 1st round last year. It sounds to me like it's coming down to a little bit like a Tom Brady, Jimmy G situation where Aaron Rodgers is kind of saying, trade Jordan Love, get me more help, give me a new contract, and I'll stay. And all of these things, the Packers are kind of saying, we're not so sure we want to do all of that, even for the MVP of the league. So I think it's easy to say every team, there's probably 27 teams in the NFL right now that would trade for Aaron Rodgers, right? I think Kansas City Chiefs, maybe the Buffalo Bills can talk themselves into keeping their quarterback, obviously. I don't know what Tampa would do at that point. That would be interesting. But you're talking about a couple of teams that feel set at the quarterback position. Everybody else is trading for Aaron Rodgers. So it's not a question of do the Patriots have interest in Aaron Rodgers. It's just how much does it take? And, do we really see Aaron actually on the move here?
I mean, maybe to me, this is going back like 2 years now, right? And Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are that couple we all knew in high school who was always about to break up, but then they never broke up because they just sort of like lived for that drama and that like moment right before the breakup where it's just like, peak like emotions. Like, I just feel like that's what this is, where Aaron Rodgers wants to be aggressive and emotional, and I think the Packers are just fine with it, and they're just kind of annoyed by it, but they're putting up with it because he's Aaron Rodgers, and this is just what it is. I think eventually he'll get what he wants because he's Aaron Rodgers and he's that good, and he'll get a new contract. Maybe they trade Jordan Love. I don't know. I never thought he was that good to begin with. Obviously, they used a 1st-round pick on him last year, so there you go. He's kind of the de facto heir apparent, but I think if he leaves, it's for jeopardy. If I'm the Packers and you look at kind of what they have and the team they have built and, the lack of competition they have really there in the NFC outside of that one team on the Gulf Coast of Florida, let him hold out. Let him hold out. See what Jordan Love can do. You still might win something. Why risk sending him somewhere where you're creating more competition? Let him hold out. Let him go to jeopardy for a year, and then it is what it is.
It kind of feels like a similar situation with Russell Wilson, right? Where Russell Wilson's disgruntled with Seattle. He's saying, I'm not protected well enough. I have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but it's still not enough. I need more help or whatever. And eventually Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll sit down, they have a kumbaya moment, and they sort of cooler heads prevail in that situation. Now, I thought the same thing about Tom Brady and the Patriots an offseason or two ago, and I thought there was no way Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick would let Tom Brady walk out the door. So at some point in time, everybody has a breaking point, and maybe Aaron Rodgers is nearing that breaking point. We know that Bill Belichick has a lot of admiration for Aaron Rodgers, and I would say it's pretty mutual on that side. And I've kind of always said, if Bill wants to make that ridiculously big move, obviously, and if he's looking at his own window, right? If Bill Belichick's looking at his own football mortality and he's saying, I only have 3 more years of this, I only have 5 more years of this, there isn't a much better quarterback other than Tom Brady, of course, to finish out your career if you're Bill than Aaron Rodgers. So that's how it's so easy to talk yourself into it if you're the Patriots. But again, Brad, I just don't know if the Packers are going to deal him, and they've already told San Francisco no. San Francisco offered number 3, according to some reports, and the Packers said, we're not trading him. So I don't know how much of a story this really is.
I agree. I don't think that there's a realistic deal that the Patriots could put together now. If there is one, I think New England should do it right away. I mean, you're going to have a great running game. You have improved your offensive weapons. The defense is stout. I think adding Aaron Rodgers to this Patriots roster puts them in Super Bowl contention right away. Definitely one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the NFL. But I don't know if the Niners offered pick number 3, that's not something the Patriots can match. I don't care if you say this year's first, next year's first, Gilmore, Hightower, a second round. It still doesn't even add up to what the value of the number 3 pick in this current draft, in this quarterback heavy draft. So I just don't think it's a realistic possibility, despite the fact that I would love for it to happen. On top of that, you could also steer the conversation to say, what if the Packers are trying to trade Jordan Love now to try to get
that's where I was going next. Yeah.
And improve, their weapons or assets or whatever. And I also don't think the Patriots would be in the market for that, considering Jordan Love was on the board at pick 23 last year, and the Patriots traded out of it, and he was selected, I think, 3 or 4 picks after. So I think clearly the Patriots weren't that interested in him. Otherwise, I mean, Tom Brady had just walked out the door. The 2 quarterbacks in the roster were Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer, and the Patriots still didn't select him. I think that their interest in him would be minimal.
That's the way I sort of feel about it as well.
If you're looking, you probably have to give up at least a 2nd-round pick, right? And if you're sitting there at 46, I mean, who would you rather have, Jordan Love or Kellen Mond or Kyle Trask? Give me one of those guys who I think, are comparable, and you get the extra year on the contract.
The way I sort of feel about it is that this is more of a Jordan Love conversation than an Aaron Rodgers conversation, because I compared it to the Brady Garoppolo thing back a couple of years ago in New England, and I sort of feel like it's the same thing. The Packers, there's, I think, a snag in contract negotiations with Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure they can work out the money with Aaron Rodgers, and all that will go away. What I feel like that Aaron Rodgers really wants is for them to trade Jordan Love and trade Jordan Love for an asset that they can then use and invest into the team so that he can win a Super Bowl. And I think that that's what he's looking for them to do. And if the Packers turn around this weekend and they trade Jordan Love, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be fine. I think he's going to, all of a sudden you're going to hear a much different tune from Jay Glazer and Adam Schefter and the people that are connected with Aaron Rodgers about his opinion about staying in Green Bay. So if there's an asset to be had here, it's not Aaron Rodgers, it's Jordan Love. Now, do the Patriots have any interest in Jordan Love? Brad, you mentioned that they had him on the board at 23. They traded out and took Kyle Duggar later on and let him fall. Now, they didn't like him at 23, but do they like him for a 3rd-round pick? Right? Do they like him for a different compensation level than the 23rd overall pick in the draft? Maybe they do see it as a different sort of conversation there in terms of, okay, we didn't like him in the 1st round, but we did like him as a 3rd-round player or a 2nd-round player, and now we are going to get him for that, and we feel a little bit more comfortable with it. It's not the move I want them to make, but at least they have a young quarterback with some upside and some talent to kind of sink their teeth into. Certainly, if we're going to talk about Jordan Love for a day 2 pick, I'd much rather that than Kyle Trask, right? Or Davis Mills or someone like that. I think that's a higher optimistic output for the Patriots. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just a hard pass on Davis Mills. I think he's somewhere between the worst of Eli Manning and then whatever Jarrett Stidham is. So I'm good on that guy personally. Trask and Mond, I think, are interesting. I think there's a little bit of upside there. They're obviously not in that top 5 group. Like, that's more the pick. If they still had Brady, like, that's the pick, right? But they've kind of put themselves out of position where they can take those guys. And so I'm like lukewarm on them. But yeah, people keep putting Davis Mills in that class. Some people have him like end of the 1st round. I mean, I kind of get it because there's flashes on tape, but I think if you get
the people that have Davis Mills as a 1st-round pick are crazy.
I think what happens is, I think depending on how much Davis Mills tape you watch and what you watch, you can see a variety of different players.
Even if you watch his best tape, which is probably against UCLA, he threw 3 interceptions in the same game they threw 400 yards.
But that's my point. If you turn it off before you get to the interceptions,
that's all he does.
I think Mills is a case of, and you guys would know this better than me because you're the tape people, but I think Mills is a case of, if you get that far in life where you're a Division I quarterback, there's just certain plays you can make. Like, you're so scary good at football. You could go to any pickup game in any park in the country and just tear everybody apart. And it becomes, at that point, once you look at guys to the next level, it becomes about how consistently can you do that. You're going to find throws that Davis Mills can make that Trevor Lawrence can also make. The difference is, and this is what it comes down to when you're looking at quarterbacks a lot. This isn't the whole picture. This is a big part of the picture that people don't realize, right? Those guys can make the same throw. The difference is Trevor Lawrence is going to make it 8, 9 times out of 10. Davis Mills only going to make it 1 or 2 times out of 10. And that's what you're looking at. So I think people just watch a couple Davis Mills throws and get excited, but you really need to look at the full body of work for a guy like that. And I just, the full body work for me is so spotty. I can't get into it.
Brad, Jordan Love versus the day 2 quarterbacks. Who are you taking?
I would take Jordan Love. Personally, I kind of want the Patriots to take Jordan Love at pick 23 last year if they were going to stand pat. Part of because I think his ceiling is so much higher than those guys. I mean, some of the throws and the athleticism he can make, even rolling to his left, that really kind of jumped off his film, his 2018 film in particular, when Matt Wells was their head coach, I thought was really impressive. So just comparing him to a Kellen Mond or Davis Mills, Kyle Trask, I think the only one potential day 2, day 3 quarterback who compares ceiling wise is Jamie Newman, but he is so inconsistent, and he's sat for a year. Just don't really know what kind of prospect he is. So I would prefer Jordan Love to those guys. I don't know if the Packers would go for just like a 2nd or 3rd round pick for Jordan Love instead of an asset, a weapon or a lineman or someone who can help them immediately, that might be able to better satisfy and keep Aaron Rodgers happy in the immediate aftermath.
Yeah, Jordan Love is decision-making, right, and ball security. I think that those two things probably on the Patriots grade scale at 23, because I would have liked him at 23 last year too. I thought that the upside was there for them to take him at that point. But when you look at the decision-making, you look at the turnovers that he had on tape, well, I think that it was 19 interceptions or something like that as last year. That, I think, just kind of puts it down a much further ring in terms of the Patriots ranking scale. So I feel like the Patriots look at Jordan Love and they see a guy that was a turnover machine, and that's something that they don't typically go for. I would still take him over these day 2 guys in this draft any day of the week, but I feel like they have a tough time with selling themselves on a player like Jordan Love because they just continuously see him turn the ball over. And that's just something. That's why I can't believe that they have much interest in Davis Mills either, quite frankly, because he was a pretty big turnover machine at Stanford as well. All right, let's talk about some of these guys that aren't quarterbacks, because we've done about 38 minutes on the quarterback scenarios. So let's talk about some options that aren't QBs in the first round. Talking to more about, I would say, guys that are in that pick 15 range. Maybe it's a small trade up is still on the table there, 12, 13, something like that, to move up for a player. But the one thing that I have heard is that, and I think everybody can tell at this point, Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn, the 2 top corners in the draft, I think are going to be gone by the time the Patriots are on the clock if they stay at 15. So that puts them in a little bit of a tweener position with the cornerback spot. I think you're too late for the top guys. You're too early for the next wave of guys. So maybe corner's not where they look if they stay pat at 15. I think you're looking at tackle, offensive tackle, or maybe a defensive player. Who would you guys like to see them come away with at that 15 pick if they end up staying pat?
I'd like to see them grab a corner or a tackle. And I said this, J.C. Horn's kind of been my guy for the 15th pick. And I know in the last couple of days, it might be trending towards he's not there. And, that certainly gets interesting. I wouldn't be opposed to Caleb Fairley. Maybe they stretch for Greg Newsome there, given the positional versatility, and maybe he ends up being Devin McCourty's replacement. But I think, your top 2 corners, there's no certainty with those 2 guys beyond this year right now. And that's a scary place to be, especially for a defense that's predicated on getting strong play out of the outside corner position. So I'd look to kind of get ahead of the ball on that. And then you can say the same thing about tackle. 2 guys who traditionally have had some trouble with injuries. Both are on de facto 1-year contracts. We'll see what happens with Isaiah Wynn's option next week. But, same thing. You might need 2 tackles next year. That's an expensive position. If you can get ahead of the ball and pick one up now, and you can just plug and play that guy next year, and you check a the box of a 2022 need tonight, that's not a bad option either. And you're going to have options there. Rashawn Slater, Christian, between Slater, Darisaw, and Horn, one of those guys should be there at 15. I'd find it really hard to believe all three of those guys will be gone. I don't think all three will be there simultaneously, but I think they'd have a shot at one of those three guys. And if any of those guys are there at 15, I think they did okay.
So for me, it's the cop-out answer is how does the board fall? But there's a numerous guys that I think the Patriots could be interested in. I think you just touched on a few good points in the sense that both offensive tackles are on essentially 1-year contracts. But I mean, I'm a wide receiver guy, and if Jalen Waddle is somehow available at pick 15, I'm gonna jump out of my seat. I might do it on live stream because I think that his fit in this offense could be just spectacular. I mean, whether they have a quarterback to get the ball to him or not, his ability to stretch the field, his ability to beat double teams down the field, to come out of route breaks and to run after the catch is just special. And he would open up so much for guys, intermediate threats like Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne. And if you put him and Nelson Aguilar on the field at the same time, that's so much speed. I think that helps the running game because you have to add defensive backs to the field in order to cover a Patriots team with those type of weapons. Defensively, I think Micah Parsons is the best defensive player in the draft. Potential character concerns aside, I think he's that stand-up linebacker edge hybrid. He's so good against the run. His instincts are great, especially against the run, and he has the athleticism, I think, to be able to defend the pass better than what he showed in his final year at Penn State, especially after a year of opting out and working on his game. His freak athleticism just jumps off the screen, and he could be that Dante Hightower successor. Maybe he plays a little bit more like a Jamie Collins as far as his raw tools go. But I think ultimately, if he gets a year or two with Mayo and Hightower kind of grooming him, he could be a really, really special multi-time All-Pro player.
I think you guys hit on all of them pretty well there. The one I do have a question for you about the wide receiver position in a second, Brad. But the first thing I just want to say is two things. One, the Patriots look at it oftentimes as a 2-year window, right? Who's going to be where the hole is going to be on the roster in 2022. That's easy to pick out tackle. It's easy to pick out corner from that list. It's also easy with tackle and corner to look at positional value and how much the contracts and free agency typically take to get a number one corner, to get a starting left tackle, if those guys even hit free agency. So the Patriots got one in Stephon Gilmore by paying him top of the market and blowing everybody else out of the water to get that contract, to get that player. So that's how it typically goes. And in terms of left tackles, it very, very rarely does a good starting left tackle hit the open market. It almost never happens because those guys are such highly coveted players in the league. So if you can get yourself a JC Horn, or if you can get Christian Darisaw at 15, I think you got to do it because of those two things. But the wide receiver thing is really appealing for so many different reasons. And Brad, you mentioned Jalen Waddle. You look at a player like that who has so much speed, but also has the ability to create so much separation that even if you do have Jared Stidham or Cam Newton playing quarterback, that guy is just going to create mismatches and foot races all over the field in order to get him the football. And you can also give him the football behind the line of scrimmage or swing him out of the backfield or something like that to make it a nice, easy throw for him. But the question that I wanted to ask you, Brad, is about Devontae Smith. And the reason being is that when you look at Smith, I think his sort of football instincts and just his sort of ability to play fast, even though he doesn't necessarily time as fast as a guy like Jalen Waddle, toughness over the middle, still has that yards after the catch ability, can play inside, can play outside. The 166 thing obviously scares you, right? Especially early on in the draft. But to me, he plays the position a lot like Patriot wide receivers that have actually succeeded in this system in the past play it.
Initially, before this Heisman season, I thought that his pro comparison might be Deion Branch, just in their skill set and the way that they play the game. Now, I think Devontae Smith took his game to new levels this past season. I think his athleticism kind of jumped off the screen a little bit more this year when he became more of the focal point. I know he had 1,300 yards as a junior, but this past season, especially when Jalen Waddle went down, he was what they had at wide receiver and to an extent John Mechie. But it was really the Devontae Smith show, and I think he's proved that he's a better athlete, his fluidity, his speed, his route speed, and after the catch than I had initially seen on the previous 2 to 3 years of his tape. I think you're right. I mean, clearly he's a scheme fit for the Patriots. I think he's a scheme fit for pretty much every offense because he kind of plays in that type of skill set where he gets open constantly. And there's always going to be a spot for a guy like that on an NFL wide receiver room. I prefer Waddle's ceiling. I know that there are injury concerns, but I think as far as if there's either one of them available at pick 15, I think that's a slam dunk pick for the Patriots.
Waddle also brings the return ability too. I mean, I think Devontae Smith can maybe return punts, but
I'm sure he could.
In terms of just game-breaking return ability, obviously that's more Jalen Waddle. So maybe the Patriots would like that a little bit more. I don't know. When I think of Patriots receivers that work out well in the system, it's always guys that have, like what I say, like a PhD in route running, right? Guys that just understand how to get open, understand leverage, understand coverages, understand how to read those things out, especially in the middle of the field, and are really, really good at the top of the route and then really good after the catch. And Jalen Waddle's good at a lot of that stuff too, but it just feels like Devontae Smith is that pro-ready, all-around type of receiver that really would work out real well here, and would be somebody that's like basically, a Jacoby Myers on steroid type of player, right? Someone that has that kind of instincts to him and natural feel for the game. And that's something that I think that they've struggled with, because you can't really coach that. You can't really coach that innate ability to kind of have that feel and understanding of coverages and things like that, where you're just out there and you're playing fast and you're not thinking about it and it's second nature to you. I think that's why they've struggled with guys like N'Keal Harry, is that he's had sort of this bigger transition into their offense than maybe they were expecting. I don't think Devontae Smith has that big of a transition into the offense. I think that he understands what an option style offense like the Patriots is going to ask about of him early on and would be able to contribute much faster. Whereas with a guy like N'Keal Harry, he never really seemed to grasp the whole kind of concept of the scheme and what they were asking him to do from a big picture standpoint. And I don't think that would be a concern with Devontae Smith. You mentioned the linebackers, Micah Parsons. I agree.
Hey, hang on real quick before we jump over to that. First off, they don't need a punt returner. They have Gunnar Olszewski. Equally big news. This is coming from 104.3 Denver right now.
Okay.
Multiple people putting this out there. According to Mark Schlereth, Aaron Rodgers to Denver is as close to a done deal as it could possibly be.
Is this a Dale Arnold situation?
No, this is so I can't find where Schlereth said it. I'm guessing he said it, didn't tweet it, but multiple Broncos reporters have put out there that Schlereth has said that a done deal for Rodgers is as close as it could be. So if anybody in the chat saw the clip and can tell us, or on Twitter at RealAlexBarth, you want to send me the clip. But multiple people are putting that out right now. Wow. So so Zach Stevens, Broncos beat reporter for one of the television stations, bunch of letters are right here. Zach Stevens, Mark Schlereth just reported on 104.3 The Fan that a deal for the Denver Broncos to land Aaron Rodgers is, quote, as close to a done deal as it can get. And that makes, to me, the odds of the Patriots landing a quarterback, whether it's moving up or staying at 15, but landing one of those top 5 guys, a hell of a lot higher, because not only are you no longer competing with the Broncos, that slots it probably, I mean, I don't know, maybe Denver held on. Well, even if Denver held on to the 9th pick, that slots another team in the top 10 now that doesn't need a quarterback.
Interesting. Well,
assumingly, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they like one of the guys in the top 10 better than Love, but
I don't know.
I think they give Love a shot here.
I just quickly glanced at
give Love a chance
at Benjamin Albright's feed. He's sort of putting the wink, nudges out there as well about this. I don't know if Kliss, he's another good Denver Broncos guy. I don't know if he's got anything on this yet.
Here's Tyler Columbus is another one. Just put it out there.
So look, there's going to be some moves tonight that I don't think that we were 100%
Dan
never
Wetzel.
have expected seeing. And Aaron Rodgers getting traded is one that definitely would come from left field. Let's get back to
Evan, hang on. Who did you say? Cecil Lammey was who you said? LeMay?
No. I looked at Albright's feed to see real quick if he's using emojis right now. He's not getting into it just yet. So we'll see.
Hang on. A reporter for the Denver I can't tell if this guy. No, he works for not. It looked like in his profile he worked for the Broncos. He doesn't. He works for
Alex,
a website covering the Broncos.
I don't want to do this, but I'm going to do it
That's
anyways. Fine. If Aaron Rodgers is going to Denver and they already have Teddy Bridgewater as well, your boy Drew Lock is getting traded.
Yeah, that's right. Go get him, Bill.
So are you actually going to say that? Like, or is that just because you have an infatuation that I don't fully understand with Drew Lock?
Well, let's look at it. So if I would still rather have Fields, Lance, Jones.
Right. So it's the Jordan Love thing, right? Would you rather Kyle Trask, Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, or Drew Lock? You know, that's
I like Drew Lock better than any of those guys. I think there's untapped potential. I think he really flashed at times last year on a team that was banged up a ton. He really didn't look comfortable behind that offensive line. The one for me, is Drew Lock or Jimmy. And give me Drew Lock 10 times out of 10 because he's 25, maybe 26. There's upside there. There's upside with Drew Lock that you don't get with Jimmy Garoppolo at 30 years old. He's on a rookie contract. You don't have to pay him. Well, you have to pay Jimmy Garoppolo. If you want to talk about the second round guys, it's probably a little bit closer. I can see Brad rolling his eyes at me on this one. So I'm guessing you're not a big Drew Lock guy.
I was just thinking, how did the Broncos get Aaron Rodgers without giving up Drew Lock in the 9th pick?
That's fair.
That's because. But do the Packers want Jordan Love and Drew Lock?
Right. Do they want Jordan Love to be the starter? Right.
I think if you're going to get a backup quarterback for Jordan Love, Drew Lock makes a ton of sense because he's cheap.
Interesting.
He plays a similar game.
And he has that big arm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I hadn't considered. All right. That's fair.
They are some similar quarterbacks. So I know stats aren't everything. Okay. Completion percentage over expected, CPOE. Drew Lock was the least accurate quarterback in the entire NFL last year, like by a mile. Like it wasn't even close. Like he was like at like negative 5.5, and I think Sam Darnold was at like 3.3 or something like that. Like we're talking about like a big gap of saying that Drew Lock is one of the most inaccurate quarterbacks in the entire league. Now, with that being said, Bill Belichick in the past, when you beat Bill, he does take notice, right? And the Broncos did come into Foxborough last year and beat the Patriots. And it was really more early on in that game, but Drew Lock made some good throws down the field.
He played a great 58 minutes in that game. He was atrocious the last two, but he played a great 58 minutes. By the way,
he was really good in the first quarter. He made some really good throws to Tim Patrick.
Mortensen is now saying that he didn't invoke the Broncos, but he said that the Packers have come to terms with the fact that it sounds like they have to move Rodgers.
Wow.
So you kind of put two and two together there. Yeah. For me with Lock too, especially right. Cause you look at what he did, like the throws to Tim Patrick, right? Those kind of downfield back shoulder 50-50 throws, and he's got the arm for it. And you kind of put that with Hunter Henry. And then maybe you go out and there's some
he's
good
really talking himself into this right now.
There's some receivers in this draft that we like, right? Like a guy like a Nico Collins. And maybe you go out and get that guy. Yes, I've been talked into Drew Lock. I said in 2018 when they didn't take a quarterback in the first round that from that moment I was focused solely on Drew Lock. Drew Lock has been my guy. Although Brad's, the more I think about it, Brad's right. He's probably going to Green Bay. So
I mean, I was thinking Cortland Sutton would be in the deal. I was trying to think of what they could possibly put together to get Aaron Rodgers. If they said no, if that report is true, and they said no, the number 3 overall pick, the Broncos give 9 plus what to get Aaron Rodgers? I was thinking like another quarterback that has some value in Drew Lock. He was a second-round pick 2 years ago, and he's been mediocre, but there's some potential there. And then maybe Cortland Sutton and extra picks. I don't know exactly what it would be. Sutton fits the Packers profile, wide receiver. Every one of their wide receivers is like 6'3", 210 or plus, and he is that. And I know he's coming off injury, but he's a stud. I mean, I think he could be a star moving forward if he's healthy. But I was just trying to figure out who exactly it could be for that deal to go through. And
if Mortensen's report is correct that the Packers have come to terms now with the fact that they're going to have to move Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, let me go back and get the exact word.
You do. If that has changed, you do wonder now if they call the San Francisco 49ers back and are like, wait a second, let's put number 3 back on the table, because 48 hours ago when you guys called us, we were still trying to work things out there, and we didn't really think it was going to get to this point. Now the system has changed. The situation has changed. Number 3, Jimmy G, or whatever it ends up being. I don't even know if the Packers would want anything to do with Jimmy G. But whatever the package is with the number 3 pick, that's obviously better than the number 9 pick. And you get your guy in Justin Fields, or you get your guy in Trey Lance or Mac Jones, and you start all over if you're Green Bay at that point.
So here you go. Jonathan Jones just now from CBS, not the Patriots, Jonathan Jones.
Yeah.
From CBS. The Broncos have indeed put together an impressive deal for Aaron Rodgers, whatever that means. So with the Sutton thing, by the way, I wonder, because we talked about this back when like Watson was on the table, and I doubt he is anymore, obviously, but I don't know if Rodgers has a no trade clause or not, but if he does, he does. So I wonder if he looks at it and kind of can shape the trade. And because if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I don't want Courtland Sutton going back to Green Bay. I want that guy. I want Denver trading.
If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I want to go to San Francisco because it's the same offense.
Yes,
you're going from the same. It's the same offense. So you're literally going from one West Coast offense to another West Coast offense. I mean, it's a seamless transition.
Well, so my point was going to be
to San Francisco,
keeping it within Denver. Or I guess this could apply to any team, right? Let's say that San Francisco is going to put like Brandon Ayuk in the deal. I'm just pulling the wide receiver off the top of my head, right? If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I want that team trading quarterbacks and picks. I don't want them trading anything else. I want to throw the ball to Courtland Sutton, right? I want to throw the ball to Brandon Ayuk, whoever. So I wonder if he could get involved in any way and kind of mold the trade where he keeps whatever offense he's going to get. Like, I don't know if he has that much power or not. And yes, like that's a blue chip trade asset. I almost said Cortland Finnegan. Cortland Sutton's a blue chip trade asset. But I wonder if Rodgers looks at that and vetoes the deal until he makes sure that the offense he's going to stays intact.
So let's bring this back to Patriots, because as interesting as all of this is, New England is not going to get into the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, unfortunately. It sounds like we have some bold predictions centered around the first round and the Patriots. I want to start with Alex's bold prediction because I kind of like it. So let's go with Alex's bold prediction first. Alex, hit us with it. Your bold prediction for the 2021 NFL Draft.
So for my Patriots bold prediction, it was tough because every bold prediction I had for the first round didn't feel bold. They could do anything. So I really went off the grid here, but like I wouldn't rule it out. 2 first-round picks from the New England Patriots. I think, they have a very full roster. They need to consolidate picks. They're in position to move up. We've talked about guys in the late end of the first round, whether it be Newsome, whether it be a guy like Zaven Collins, right, who they might really be into. Maybe it's a guy like Kadarius Toney. I wonder whether they pick at 15 or move up. If they then try to sneak back into the back end of the first round and maybe get one of these players like Collins. When I made this prediction, I was thinking Zaven Collins, but maybe they go up and get one of these guys. If it's for the whole draft for the Patriots, I think they take a running back before they take a receiver.
I hate that one. All right, Brad, what's yours?
I hate the running back over the receiver one as well. However, mine is they trade out of the first round. So I'm going to go the complete opposite direction. I look at the Jags and, longtime Bill Belichick friend and confidant, Urban Meyer, sitting at pick 33 and 45. And probably, to be honest, if you're Urban Meyer, you're starting, this not a new franchise, but you're taking over a franchise that's basically in peril. You're getting Trevor Lawrence as your new start. Don't you want on the same night to get someone to protect him and a receiver for him to throw to? So you can kind of sell that to the fans. Here's our shiny new quarterback, but we also got guys who are going to help him on the same night, not on day 2, on the first night of the draft. So they have a pick in the 20s. They also have 33 and 45. I think they give those 2 picks to the Patriots for pick 15.
I don't hate that either if they're not going to get their quarterback, right? Because the Patriots they can find some good players still. This is a pretty good draft, I would say, for the first 50 or 60 picks. I think there's a lot of really good players. So they are able to come away with 3 guys in that top 60 range, right? Or top 50 range. It's not terrible, but my bold prediction for the evening is that the San Francisco 49ers are going to take Trey Lance at number 3, which is going to open the door for the Patriots to take Mac Jones at some point in the first round. I feel like there is a lot of people that have just committed to 1, 2, and 3 like a week ago, and they said it's going to be Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, and everybody just kind of wrote that down in Sharpie. I feel like the 49ers have some second thoughts on it. I feel like they've gotten some cold feet on Mac Jones, and they've sort of reverted to a little bit more to Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is going to be the pick for San Francisco. I think there's a chance that the Patriots are then going to go out and get Mac Jones. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Patriots have been targeting Mac Jones this entire time. And if they used Justin Fields as this smokescreen to get everybody off the scent that Mac Jones is really the guy that they want. I also know that Bill has been talking to Kyle Shanahan and his boy John Lynch, and they are very, very good friends. So Bill's known what San Francisco is wanting to do for a while now. I am sure those guys have been talking. So that's how I feel. I think that Mac Jones is a bold prediction, by the way. So I'm not saying that this is 100% going to happen. But if I had to go bold, I would say Mac Jones to New England, Trey Lance to the San Francisco 49ers, which I don't know how New England fans would feel about that. I don't.
Can I give you one more bold pick just for the weekend as a whole before I have to hop off here? I think at some point a team is going to run out of the time on the clock for the pick, and they're going to have to get bumped down. It hasn't happened since 2017, but I think with the new, and this maybe would have applied more to last year, but I think it's new draft setups for a lot of these teams, and guys might be out of sort. And we know teams are, late getting medical information. They just have less information overall. I think it creates more discussion, more debate inside the draft rooms. I could see it. I don't think it happens tonight, but I think maybe, some point late on day 2 or early on day 3, there's a run of guys. Suddenly a team has to scramble and they don't have a ton of information on the top players on the board. They're trying to find a trade. That time ticks down and they miss it. So that's, I could see, again, it's been since 2017. Before that was 2011. It doesn't happen a ton, but I could see it happening this year.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our pre-draft show here. Brad and I are going to be back with some friends in a few minutes as well to take you through the entire draft. Alex got to get off, but we're going to be back. Brad, John Zanis, Greg Bedard is hopefully going to join us at some point when the Patriots make a pick. So we will be back in a few minutes. We're going to let this Jacksonville Jaguars take Trevor Lawrence #1 overall. We'll see when the draft really starts to get exciting. Probably around the 3rd pick, we're going to come back on, Brad and I, and we're going to carry you through when the Patriots make their pick, as long as they don't trade down a bunch of times. And we'll be back at the 3rd pick of the draft when the San Francisco 49ers really start to kick things off. Although maybe the Jets will surprise us too. I'm not 100% sold Zach Wilson's the pick yet. I'm 99% there. But yeah, we'll be back. #3 pick, San Francisco 49ers, when they are on the clock. Come join us, and we'll break things down until the Patriots finally make a selection here tonight in the 1st round. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on the pre-draft show, and we'll see you guys very soon.